of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's see. The Finance Committee is a standing subcommittee consisting of two council members, currently Paul McCoy and Colleen Baker, the city manager, the city treasurer, the finance director. The Finance Committee considers and makes recommendations on matters referred to it by the city council relating to finance, budgets, audits, capital planning, and debt. And now we'll go to the public comment section of our meeting. Public participation is limited to those items listed on the agenda. If your comments do not concern an item listed on the agenda, please address the committee at the next regular meeting. The city requests that persons addressing the Finance Committee refrain from making personal and slanderous, profane, or disruptive remarks. Committee members who, when recognized by the committee chair, may ask questions from the presenter, but no action may be taken by the committee during the public comment section of the meeting. Under the Brown Act, the committee is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the posted agenda. Please speak from the podium. Please state your name for the record prior to providing your comments. Please address the committee as a whole. If you have documents to present, please provide a minimum of 6 copies, and please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. So do we have any public committee online? Any public comment online? Nope. Okay, thank you. And do we have any public comment in the gallery? It appears we do not. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. This is a time for the Finance Committee or the city manager to respond to public comments and may direct staff to prepare a report or place an item on a future agenda. Seeing as how there is no public comment, we will go on to item 4, which begins the discussion phase of our meeting. And we'll start with 4A, which is special event staff and council review procedures, discussion and possible direction.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, good. I just wanted to introduce, we do have an example in there. We don't need to get into the details of that event, although we certainly would like to kind of get better understanding of what the expectations are for anybody filling out the application. But I think primarily we just want to talk about the structure and help. We may not solve this today, but we want to start to implement structure where you guys can set an expectation and then we can deliver applications to the Finance Committee that then get hashed out if there's questions. And then ultimately, if approved by the Finance Committee, they would lead to the consent agenda for the City Council if required by ordinance. And so that is, I guess, the introduction to this item.
So maybe we could start it off with, hey, this is how we're currently doing it. And so we can vet out some, maybe these are where we're running into struggles when it comes between the public meeting their needs and expectations and meeting your guys' expectations as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jasenia collects most of our all of our special event requests. A person comes in and says, I want to throw this special event. We give them a package that says, okay, fill all this out, give us all the details and information of what you're going to be doing at your event. There's always room for human error in this process, and they fill it out. Then Jasenia writes a staff report off of the information they've provided. We write a resolution to take to council, and then we take it straight to council for approval for that event. Am I missing any steps yet?
That is close to the perfect world.
Yes.
As Finance Director McCoy alluded to a little bit, what is happening on our side with PW is that, and Emily and I spoke about this a little bit this morning, we believe as staff that the first step should be, of course, coming to the counter for a packet That packet should include the encroachment permit through PW for street closures, because almost all of these include some form of street closure. And so a completed packet at the counter would include that in our perfect world, and then follow what Director McCoy stated. So looking though to what the community development director and PW have created in the last year or two, I just may offer up that we take it one step further than that. Instead of just hitting the counter and being handed a packet and walked through it while you're standing in line and there's folks trying to pay their water bill behind them, that maybe we look to a pre-app meeting like we do with the planning with development. In that instance, we could hand them the packet and send them away and say, fill out as much as you possibly can and come back on Tuesday at 9 and meet with those that need to be. Maintenance and operations manager Miller, myself, finance, Yesenia, and then, you know, every event has different setups, different teardowns, different timing, different conflicts within it that need to be answered. But if we could wrap that up with the event coordinator in this room before the completed filing, and then write the resolution that has every piece in it we know, I think we're golden.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, does that sound?
Yeah,
Are there pieces in that
yeah, we had a recent circumstance actually just this week where I didn't receive word of a shutdown until Wednesday for a Saturday shutdown. And this particular closure has actually 3 times where crews will have to respond on a Saturday to move traffic control devices. I already had a fog seal set up the Friday before without knowing of the events.
right? And as that came to pass this morning or last night at 4:45, the city received the encroachment permit from the coordinator at almost 5 o'clock, 2 days before the event. PW Ben's working the guys trying to find coverage for a weekend, which is a little difficult because with the new layout with the union and all that, the holiday Monday we had creates Saturday as not overtime. It's straight time. So it's hard. It's more difficult for Ben in the 11th hour or whatever analogy you want to use to find volunteers to come in. So this one may be Ben and I Saturday morning setting this thing up if he can't find people, you know. So it's not the end of the world. It's what we do, but
It's too short.
that is not a failure of anyone on staff. It's a failure of process. And it's why Emily and I spoke this morning to, why wouldn't we put the encroachment permit as like the first thing they fill out? And then if they get that, then Ben knows they're looking for these dates. And then it comes to finance committee and or council, depending, you know, I guess what we're trying to do is get this to council, to finance, for the blessings, right? And then we get all of that written up right off the bat. And that would be my perfect world. I think, Yesenia, does that cover everything, or we have a hole that I'm not seeing?
It does, it covers everything and it helps resolve any changes.
Yeah, so that's kind of, you know, you had the very paying attention to one of our presenters who was like, yes, we're gonna have vendors, and you're like, but your resolution doesn't say you're gonna have any vendors, and we're all, because he told us he wasn't having any vendors. My biggest stickler on this and the support that I would need from council is, if you do not have a completed packet on the 1st of the month for your event on the next 1st of the month, you are not having your event. And sticking to that, and I know that's a hard thing to do, but as you can tell, we have to schedule people, we have to schedule resolutions, we have to make council meetings. Does a council meeting get, hey, we planned on hitting this council meeting, but hey, that one got canceled. We didn't have a quorum. You know,
Or they didn't provide insurance in time to get it in the packet, or the encroachment permit wasn't finalized, or there's
Yeah.
just every single event has its own hurdles.
you know.
And
oh,
we know
Ben
a
got
lot of
sick
these
for a
are
week,
folks that
couldn't do the
don't
encroachment. I mean,
necessarily do this for a living.
Yeah.
Right, just some, You got the new ones like Beef and Brew. It's all new to them. So they lean to EDC and Discover Siskiyou, who know how to run city events, but that's a different process. You know, those have the words in there of in kind and, you know, because city sponsored. And
I
so
will-
they're throwing Discover Siskiyou and EDC are freely sharing and working with these folks that don't know what they're doing, which is great, but they're giving them templates that aren't the template for a privately, you know, it's not a city sponsored event. It's not on our big list. So staff's goal, inner discussions, you know, pie in the sky, perfect world would be, we open up the books on January 1st for events for the year, and then we close them February 15th. Yeah, just throw a date out there, but we've all discussed this internally. Our perfect world would be what we've already spoken to in the process. We open it, we make a big deal out of it. Hey, Beef and Brew. Hey, Chris Taylor. Hey, everybody. It's January 1st. We could even phone tree them, email them, whatever. Get in here because the books are closing. And then we're just done with special events for the year. And most of these are annual events. There's the one-offs, you know, but I think as a goal, maybe if we don't even attain that, but if we keep that in our head as a goal, like we would really like to get everybody hammered out in the first month and a half, 2 months of the year. And then we can close the books on special events and go back to our jobs because we're not events coordinators. It's not what you pay us to do. So my 2 cents.
I don't think we're quite there yet.
No, but as
If
that
we could,
goal to
as a
be
goal,
looking
yes,
to
we
that.
wanna
In
get
the
to-
interim, we just clean this up as we've spoken to. I think we're good.
Yeah. But it's having that backing of, for me, keeping that deadline of, hey, if it's not in, it's not in. Like,
Yeah, the
it's-
1 month deadline is definitely
it's
needed.
and it seems to them, I know it seems to them like, oh, no big, it shouldn't be that big of a deal, just approve it, move on.
No, it is.
But there's a lot of background work that has to happen and be approved and be appropriate in order to make it happen. I personally have already reached out to both schools regarding their parades. So that we don't have like what happened last year, and the high school was starting their parade and they called the police department and we're like, hey, where are you guys?
And that's an annual.
Yeah.
That's an
That's
annual-
happened for the Jackson Street School Halloween walk,
That's gone on for
the
30 years.
YHS parade of cheerleaders on fire trucks. And, you know,
That's a no-no
they just
decision.
happened because in the 70s, that was fine.
Yes.
So we're, you know, I've reached out, hey, here's your deadlines to get your stuff in. Please let me know if you need anything. So hopefully we can get them all on board and on that routine. And I think once we establish like, hey, minimum of 1 month for us to get this turned around for you. And even that can be close depending on the month.
Very, very short. This is a- this is like, this is what we have to collect. 1 month is not for us to really-
2 months would be a minimum, probably.
Yeah.
2 months is a minimum.
To get all,
Yeah, I'd say if this is gonna go to city council, you need 2 months because it's just, you don't have enough time to get on the agenda within just 1 month.
I'm fine with.
But that's what I'm sorry, that's kind of what we're looking for is, you know, when I first started, and when Emily started and Juliana, John, things just kind of happened and it was a different council at that point.
Mhm.
And we have slowly started to enforce certain things, especially within planning and building. And that was a little bit of a minor shakeup. And some of the council members were kind of taken aback by that. And we had to show them that that was what our policy and ordinance stated. And so now we would like to enforce, but we also want to be cognizant that we want to have events downtown. And we don't want to upset whatever the will of the council is. So we're looking for you guys to kind of guide us with what kind of structure you're accepting.
You can go
Want me
ahead.
to go?
You go ahead and go if you're okay with it. Yeah. You got it.
So, you know, from my point of view as a council member, it's important that when we get the packet to council, that it is complete and that there is, you know, again, there's always room for human error, but that it's a complete packet. And to me, that means that you guys need to get that complete information from the event coordinator. So I really like the idea of the everything in one packet the encroachment permit, I mean, whatever you need for that event, it needs to be submitted to you guys in full at the time the application is submitted. That's how I'm thinking. I don't know the inner workings of your office. And from there, you talked about having like a pre-application meeting. I think that that's really important as well, so that the event coordinator is really aware of what needs to happen, especially if they're it's a new event. And that way, all the logistics can be worked out ahead of time. I think that just from what I'm hearing, it might benefit everybody if once the staff report is developed, if the event coordinator could review that and actually sign off or initial it or something, acknowledge that they've read it and yes, this is my event. So that, again, if there's been any miscommunication on anything, that's the final check before it gets prepared for the city council. And then I'm become aware that the reason that we have to have resolutions is all the legal stuff behind it, but it would be really nice to be able to cut down on your paperwork as much as possible. I mean, I think gone are the days of having one or two events downtown that required street closures to every weekend. No, I'm exaggerating. It's not every weekend, but along with that, I'm just going to put in my 2 cents that we tell people in the packets, and we put in the packets that, you know, the work that the city does has an average cost of $750. But with all of the staff time and everything that goes into it, is that a realistic number?
Not including admin time, no.
Yeah. And so that's a huge part of it. And the reason that's important to me is I look at this not as a gift of public funds, but really this is a gift to the community. And with something like this, I just want the community to know that, yes, this is what the city is doing for you at this expense on the part of the city, because, you know, so often you guys don't do anything for us, blah, 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 on and on. Sorry.
This is a cost.
I had a cup of coffee a little while ago. Can you tell?
I like it.
You're fine. You're fine. Keep going. I mean,
I know that this is not specifically the purpose of the meeting today, but I really would like the council to consider some guidelines for these. Like, how many events are we willing to subsidize per organization per year? And I would like to see the city council, I know that we have as part of our budget, this is where the money comes from for these events, but I just really would like to see it capped every year. And once the applications have been submitted, and we've reached that cap, we've reached it, and please apply again next year. I mean, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of a balance of, yeah, we want to bring people into downtown Yreka, but we also have to be cognizant of how much it's actually costing us. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on that. I had somebody recently talk about exactly very similar to what you're talking about, Councilmember Baker, and that is they questioned why the city funds the 3 events that it funds. And they had a proposition to possibly open up funding similar to what you're talking about, have a budget, and we can have some of that money that would be subsidizing the closure of the roads. And once that money's gone, or we could say, hey, we're going to make these decisions between January 1st and February 15th, completely a first come, first served basis. And when the money's gone, the money's gone. But also to add on to that, I thought it was just a fascinating idea, was we sponsor events with the EDC or Discover Siskiyou at $10,000 per event. They go out and get more money and make a $30,000 event. What is to stop us from possibly inviting the idea of new city events where maybe we were willing to sponsor one or two more events that are new ideas in the city. So if we had $20,000 set aside, we could say, hey, we will sponsor two different events, and then kind of entice people democratically to have an opportunity to run a new event rather than continually to only sponsor the old events.
Mr. Ledbetter, what do we do if and when, because we know it's going to happen, that let's say that we set aside, let's just say we set aside $20,000, and let's say that somebody comes to us and says, I want you to put up $2,000 and I'll put up 4,000, but then they never put it up, because I can foresee that happening with some of our events. So that then do we just say that we learned on that one and we don't we don't sponsor them anymore. We allow them to do their events, but we don't sponsor them with money? Or what do you see happening there?
I think if you were to run a program like that, I'm not saying that you need to, but if we're just having this discussion, I think you would probably have a recap meeting in front of the finance committee or council to determine how well the event went, what the money was used for, and if it was worthwhile for the city to continue to sponsor said event. It's similar in the instance of, it's probably about $2,000 in a lot of instances for the time that it takes to get some of these events off the ground. And then if you throw the stage in there and the closure of the roads, you're escalating, in my opinion, up to closer to $2,000. And that is an expectation we should have if we're subsidizing events. What was the outcome? And is it really worth having the event again? Or should we make a determination that that person's no longer available to get sponsor or subsidized?
And if I may, to tag on to what city manager's saying, that Discover, Siskiyou, and EDC run full metrics after theirs. They know how many cell phones. I don't know how that magic works, but they have the app that does it. And they know how many people have come to Minor Street on this day between these hours, and it's not that difficult to set up. So I think, to Jason's point, is prove to us that you're benefiting the Minor Street merchants when you're on Minor. As part of that after event debrief in front of the finance committee.
So as a result of today's meeting, what I'm hoping we can do is we can at least establish some minimum guidelines. I don't know if those have to go, I guess they probably have to go back to the council. But I would say that both Councilwoman Baker and Finance Director Aldrich, and Aldrich, yeah. And Public Works Director Matt Bray, and from the city office, Jasenia, and from Public Works, Matt, have great points. And I think we probably need to somehow begin to put a date on these things, a finite date for when they can apply. Now, and again, this year it might be, you leave it the whole year, but I also think there needs to be a finite timeline for application. Say we have to have it a month prior to, we have to have it by the first of the month in order to get it on the agenda. And I think we need to have a little more closure on as to what they actually need. I don't know if that's everything, and I do think it needs to, I think the encroachment permit needs to go immediately. I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not blaming I'm not saying anybody's not doing this, but when the application goes out, the encroachment permit needs to go out, and it needs to go immediately to Public Works, and Public Works then needs to notify Jasenia and her department as to whether or not this is doable before we even tell them this is doable. I mean, that's just what I'm saying. So chime in.
Part of that is a number of years ago, we worked with Pace Engineering to come up with a number of set closures that were designed by engineers, exactly where to put the closure, exactly what flags to put. So it's an engineered document without a stamp, because if they were to stamp it when they handed it to us, then that particular engineer that his stamp, he would become liable if someone drives through the barricade and runs over somebody. So they are unstamped plans. That said, and it's not so much a bluff, we have engineered plans and we offer them, pick one. Almost every time they ask if I can redline it, because, well, I don't need this much and I don't need that much. And we're really putting our feet down now, or I am personally. It's, these are the closures you can pick from. If this one's too big, great, it'll be closed. You can park your vendors' tow trucks in there that towed in the stuff, but this is what it is, because then these guys don't need to go learn 18 different closures plus the different
Right.
ones that Matt redlined and made bloody with a red pen to make this event work. So that's in play. We have that. I'm standing on it as hard as I can. And Yesenia knows that. So yeah, it's really straightforward. It's just the less we allow the coordinators to alter the whole plan. It's just bang, then we could do it.
The more
in
control we
January.
have over it.
Right. And to that point, for control over it, last year, one of these events never mentioned a mechanical bull. They didn't mention a bounce house, but there was nothing in that paperwork where I could tell them deflate it. We didn't give them permission. They didn't ask. We didn't know. I saw pictures the day of that there's being people thrown off a mechanical bull on Minor Street. Who goes to court for that? We do.
We do.
Because we allowed it. So, I mean, just that way, in that instance, if, like you say, they sign off, this is my event, if there's extra stuff on there, we could shut it down. Not the whole event, but at least that portion that wasn't covered and spoken to in the insurance. So
Sure.
Yeah.
it can be simple. They're just parties, just throwing a party downtown.
Yeah, and I think that is absolutely, you have an absolutely great point that it can be simple. And if we just have cookie cutter closures, like you said, choose one and just, I almost feel like the tail is wagging the dog with these events right now, in that because it's new and we are trying to get people down to Minor Street. And so I think now is the prime time to just kind of rein everything in and let's make it work for staff first and foremost. I mean, yes, you're right. It's a party. We want everybody to have a good time. We want to be able to provide that entertainment for people, but we don't want to break the backs of our staff and make it complicated. We just need to make it as simple and as straightforward as possible. And I really like the idea of there's a time frame at the beginning of the year, January 1st through February 28th. Get your stuff in.
It's been a dream of staff, we know it's, like I said, pie in the sky, but it would be beautiful.
And it's something we can start advising of now, every event. Hey, next year, your applications are gonna be due January 1st.
I agree.
And then just tell them all year long, it's gonna be due, it's gonna be due. And that way they're all prepared, they've all been warned. We'll send a follow-up email, phone call. Hey, remember when we talked about this? Starting January of 2025. I just said that out loud. Your window of opportunity to apply for these events is January 1st through February 15th or the end of February, whatever we decide. And if your applications are not in and complete, your event will not happen next year. We're probably going to have a straggler or two that was like, oh, I completely forgot. Wasn't, and council can make that decision of, okay, we're going to let it go, or no, we're going to stick to, here's the process.
And a proper event coordinator, the moment this year's event ends, they start planning next
Right.
year's event and
Right.
marketing for next year's event, because they're rolling off of the joy that was created by this year. Case in point, you look at Denny Bar, they're already all over the internet promoting their next Trails End Music Festival in Etna. The day after that ended, they were promoting next year's dates. Put it on your calendar. That's what a proper event coordinator does. So I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility.
It's what we did in
for these
school
folks.
For tournaments and game and schedules. We started planning.
They know they're already fundraising and planning for next year's party. So
And Can one of the questions that we ask be, is there an alternative? Is there an alternative location?
I have asked that recently,
An alternative, I'm sorry.
pushing to the
Alternative what?
parks.
An alternative location.
Got it.
Yes,
I mean,
Yeah.
Minor Street Park, I think
I agree.
is a great place for some of these events that don't necessarily draw huge crowds. And actually more appropriate than closing the streets down. And the other thing that I'd really like to see, and I'm sure that it's in the packet, is that there's a sign off from all of the businesses on Minor Street, because I have friends that own businesses on Minor Street and they're always like, we didn't know this was happening. Nobody said anything to us. So, I mean, I think that should be part of the packet.
Is that part of the packet? Is that all affected businesses have been notified and then the event coordinator is just signing off that yes, that happened? It's in the resolution, they are to notify them.
Yeah, and I don't want to mention any names, but I will tell you that I've been approached, not just as council, before council, from businesses of mine that said, yeah, I was approached, but I don't support it. And I won't talk about who it was. I'll talk privately to you. So, I mean, it is nice to give them the opportunity to at least to say, just so that they know that it's happening. I think most people say that, but I think if you have just one or two businesses that might not be supportive of it, not for any other reason than, I don't know, for any other reason than they were going to be gone that weekend and they were going to be closed Saturday at, 3:00 or 2:00. They just kind of go along with it sometimes. Then later on, they complain about it. So later.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't help much, but, I think it's good. I think it's a good idea just to have them reach out to everybody.
So I think we're kind of relying on them the event coordinator to do that as
Yeah.
part of the resolution. They're saying that they have or will be doing that. I don't know how we hold them accountable. to
I don't
that.
think there's a way to probably hold them accountable.
That we've attempted it in the past
Yeah.
with some of these events, and yeah, there's no closure to it,
I don't
and
think
it's not a vote, right? They're not going
Right.
around asking yay or nay.
chamber thing.
They're just saying, hey, we're doing this. We have the permissions of council. Did you know about it? Did you want to be in on it? Yeah, as you say, some folks, they're not going to make any more money in that particular shop because there's a bunch of kids out front on Saturday or something. But yeah, there's never been a closure to that. I've seen
Okay.
partially filled out lists that waved like, hey, look, I got these many people to sign. It's like, well, I don't even know how many people should be signing. So what is 10? What is 10? Like, are there 32 that we should be? I don't know. So
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And
This is
it's,
just a guy working there. He's like, sure.
but then, it's better than, even that is better than putting that burden upon staff
Better than nothing at
to
all.
cold call every business that
Yeah.
might be affected. Ben's had problems with the bank where they weren't on Minor Street, but the closure closed that section. And, he and I have both been in the bank with the manager. Thank goodness I'm related to one of them. And I got off easy, but hey, we'll open up some barricades and get your drive-through open again. We're sorry, we didn't even think about it because the event coordinator didn't think to go down Broadway and tell them, hey, this block is closed too. They just focused on the Minor Street merchants.
Unintended consequences.
Just didn't even see the bank. So each one's different, but
Yeah.
that's what comes up with the 4 or 5 closures that we offer. And I think we might be down to 3 of those now. So, but I agree with the park. I pushed to the park. I push. In my travels, I think I was in San Luis Obispo or somewhere like that. And they have a park that looks very similar to Minor Street. And the food trucks are all set up just in the
Right there.
grass, right behind the sidewalk. And you walk down the sidewalk and just buy $5 of food every 10 feet. And the party's going on in the park. So,
I think that's wonderful.
At Bel Air.
and it's much easier on Ben and his crew because there's no traffic closure. The sidewalks are used for walking. It's a 25 or however much it is now dollar reservation of the park. That's really easy. And then at that point, they're just coming to council for beer, vendors, and loud music.
And it's highlighting our parks and it's still getting people in the downtown area.
To a point, yes. as a former proprietor of a drinking establishment on Minor Street, we saw a little blip before the concerts in the park and a little blip afterward, but not enough to, we weren't banking on it. We weren't making the power payment on it. It's like, come grab a bento box full of food and we'll, you
Well,
know,
and-
come back and have a beer after.
I guess my question is actually because I don't know this, so anybody chime in, is do we have any idea of how the businesses are affected by these events? I mean, yes, Discover Siskiyou has a way of saying how many cell phones were pinged, but does that really necessarily mean more dollars?
I think it would be a request to those folks for their gross receipts versus the weekend
Yeah.
before, and they're not gonna provide
Yeah,
that,
not gonna
right?
provide
They're
that.
not gonna tell the government that.
And it kind of depends on which event is it, you know, so like the kids block party, probably Bella Artworks is gonna make bank that weekend. They're gonna sell ice cream out the,
Mhm.
you know, out the door.
Yeah.
But if it's the
But-
Divine Masterpiece, Bella Artworks might have somebody come in, you know, but they're probably, it's not going to benefit any business per se. I don't think by having that event with the streets closed down.
Right.
Amazing.
Kenny's not gonna sell steak dinners on the beef and brew night, right?
Right. He's
They're
probably
selling
just gonna
steaks
be
in
like,
front of
we're
his-
taking the weekend off. You know, so I think it really depends on what shop you have
Yep.
and what kind of event it is. You know, Lona Mays may get people strolling in during, you know, Gold Rush days, but you know, the kids' block party is nowhere near her.
So forgive me for asking this. This is the caffeine speaking.
Oh.
I love it.
This is being recorded. Behave yourself, Colleen. Then I always kind of thought that the idea of having the events downtown is to bring people into downtown Yreka to kind of showcase Minor Street and to help the businesses out there as well. Am I?
So I think maybe by having the events, it provides exposure to those businesses. So somebody may never go down Minor Street. I go down Minor Street every day. But somebody may never go down there and they go down for the kids' block party and they're like, oh, I didn't know we had a dress shop down here. Oh my gosh, I'll come back next weekend and I'll check it out. So I think that's where the exposure comes in from having these events. They may not get the income the night of, but it will bring to attention of, oh, we got a new mercantile. Trying to think what else is down there. Like, oh, there's that fitness place is down there. Oh, I wonder what that is. Like maybe I'll check it out. Like they just may never go there, so they don't know that it's there.
But I would say the majority of our citizens, when they identify with Yreka, they identify with, you know, Minor Street, not Walmart, where the tax revenue comes from, right? It's everyone loves their downtown. It's Mayberry. Let's go down there.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I think it's the downtown is more defining of the city and a celebration for all to enjoy rather than that is always what we hear, Councilmember Baker, is this drive for these events that somehow are going to affect the businesses. But as Retta can point out to you, 2% of our sales tax comes from Minor Street. So it's not really, it's not happening in that way. I would say looking at it more as a public good rather than the events need to drive business. But I know that it's talked about in that way in the past, but I don't think, I only have hearsay, like the Nixon store supposedly did really, really well on one of the last events, but I've never heard any actual value. And I would veer more towards what Matt's saying is that we kind of define ourselves by our historic district. And if we're going to have an event, we want it to take place in that venue, I guess.
It's more the midway of the fair vibe on when it's on Minor.
However, Mr. City Manager, in a long-term plan, if we had, say, a microbrewery at the fire hall and a microbrewery and a small boutique hotel at on Minor Street, and then we had 8 or 10 other shops filled out, say 2 more restaurants and then 6 or 8 more shops filled up, over a period of 6 or 7, 8 years, we build on that and it could be a destination point.
Yeah, no, it's a destin. I mean, I think it is a destination for us now. But yeah, that is kind of when we talk about business, that's our intent, is to spur that type of economic redevelopment on Minor Street to bring more of those anchor businesses to the site. But right now we have some nice businesses on Minor Street. We would like to see them do well. It is important to us if closing the street down is hampering them. We need to know that because we need to stop doing it, quite frankly. But because there are other venues, I agree. Minor Street Park is completely underutilized. On some level, I wonder about some of these kids events, why they're not kind of focused around Minor Street Park. But I would say we're looking at Minor Street and Broadway as more of the public good and less of standing up businesses, I guess.
So as we look to perhaps wrap this up, can we also talk about when Public Works, when Matt and Jasenia meet with these people, perhaps they can drive for there are certain things that they can drive them towards the park. Obviously, they can go, hey, this is a perfect for the park, and we don't have to shut things down, and you can get in there a little bit earlier, or blah 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 blah. I mean, is it conceivable that we as a city can very politely guide some of the conversation on some of these?
I think so. And I mean, I think you guys have already helped us today a great deal. I mean, if Council Member Baker has kind of instigated this topic, and we're very appreciative. That's why you see so many staff members, I guess, here today, is if we can just know that we can move to the January to February 28th, we'll start rolling that out now. We're looking for you guys to give us really the backbone to stand up to some of the people that are coming in and are way too late to do an event, really. And so I kind of advocate that until we get to that time, I think you can't do an event in 3 months. I mean, I think 3 months is more realistic. So if you're coming in to do an event in 1 month, when am I going to have it approved by council for you to advertise that event? So I feel like setting up the structure now where it would be completely appropriate for a pre-application meeting to be just kind of set aside at a very specific hour block every single week, so that Jasenia, Matt, Ben, whoever's involved in this knows that Fridays between 8 and 10, that's when we do all our pre-app meetings. And if we don't have any pre-app meetings, then those guys can go do something else that day. But if I step foot in on a Monday and I want an event to happen in 3 months, then I am given a time Friday morning to come back in and do my pre-app meeting. We're looking for more structure for our staff because we're giving away capacity by meeting the community's needs to walk them through how they can get their event done. And we would like to force them to do the paperwork, but not subvert us by complaining to the city council that we're not being accommodating to get events done. So I think you're kind of giving us that. So if I were to take anything away today, is what you guys said gives staff the opportunity to go back and start writing a policy, and then come back to you guys and have you audit that policy. And policies are internal, so you would just be working with us on this, and inevitably everything still goes to the city council. So we don't technically need the policy to be approved by the city council. We can internally create the policy ourselves, but with your buy-in, that is a lot more helpful in order to streamline the upfront process. And I think the biggest things are going to be, if we can just go back to what Council Member Baker started with kind of at the beginning, how much money do you think you would be comfortable budgeting specifically for the waived fees of closing the street and staff time in a given budget? And then that way we can start toying with that number and come back to you guys with a draft policy and how many events you guys would technically be subsidizing in a given year.
Go ahead, Retta.
I was just gonna say, I think when you go, what would drive people perhaps to the parks more is not waiving so much of the hard costs, because it makes more a different business decision with them on their events. because there's kind of an expectation that we will waive the fees, we will waive the encroachment, we will provide porta potties or whatever for their event. And when you start limiting those, I think they'll start looking at other venue options.
Well, and some of those options might be the park.
Exactly.
So, which is great
Yeah.
because we need to, as Matt said, that park's underutilized, we need to use it more. We can choose for softball, you can choose for charge of football for practices and yeah, occasional things, but it really is underutilized, so. Okay, so, it sounds like, the committee, including Councilwoman Baker and myself are in, agreement. I think Councilwoman Baker and I are probably gonna need to do some chatting with our colleagues to explain to them why we, are supportive of this. I don't think that's out of the realm of reality. I think we can do that. Do we need anything more on this at this point in time? Do we need to talk about the fact that then after all this is done, they need to come to the finance committee first and then go to the council? Or we just need to worry right now about the policy? Is that what you're all feeling?
I think I would read the room on Jasenia, Matt and Ben and Emily on what they're thinking, but I think you gave us enough to come back with a policy and to see, I mean, we just need a draft that we can look at on paper so you guys can start to see what that looks like and approve or disapprove of. I don't think this is going to happen overnight, so I think this is a good first step. Is there any lacking information anybody has? I mean, we certainly still have, the events are still coming, right? We've been inundated with 6 or 7 events by one person over the course of 12 months now that we're kind of working through. We're still going to have to work through that until we solidify the policy. So I would say give us a few weeks and we would call another meeting. Do you guys have enough to start something?
Yes.
Well, I would say that it should be given to us by January 1st, between January 1st and February 28th, and then we will look at it. Jasenia, do you feel okay about it? Do you have anything, do you have more you want to add? Emily, do you have more you'd like to add?
No, we'll get you a draft policy and at least we'll review it internally first and then we'll bring it back to you guys for your input. That is very valued.
Yeah, that was a joke on the timeline. So, Matt, do you have more? Ben, do you have more that you want to add?
No, thank you guys.
No. Retta, Councilwoman Baker?
No, I'm done. I think the caffeine is wearing out.
I think you've covered sufficiently, did a good job. So, well, we appreciate the time you put into it. And it's nice to see you here, Mr. Miller and Mr. Bray. And what's your last name? Miss Ortiz. I'll just call you Miss. How's that? And Miss Hogan and Miss Aldrich and Miss Prohaska. So, should we move on? Can we move on to item 2 now or? Okay. I just want to make sure I don't want to cut people off. So we just finished item 4A. We're going to go to item 4B. Thanks again, you two, which is a review of the city's GASB 68 actuarial report for McLeod and Watts for the fiscal year of 2023, measured as of June 30th, 2022. And for those of you who might be listening, GASB is Government Accounting Standards Board, number 23, number 68. So we're going to go ahead and turn this over to probably Retta and Emily to begin with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or Emily, thank you.
Yes.
And Emily, I'm sorry, just before you start, my wife's back from her appointment, so I'm actually just going to turn off the computer and come back in. I have an appointment after 5 anyway, on Zoom, and I don't like to work from home. So I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay.
So before you is our GASB 68 accounting report. We just received it September 1st. As you know, we are required to do this analysis of our pension to help determine what our UAL is and where we stand with our pension funding. Retta and I have plans to come back to you with some plans to address our issues that I'm sure you both are aware of. If we look And page 1.
Mhm.
Sorry, I think my glasses are already like not good enough. I'm like.
Yeah.
You can see here that our total pension liability is 42.6 million. One here, this one.
Page 28 of 121.
Thank you. Thank you, Retta.
Wow.
Our total pension liability is 42.6 million. We have some fiduciary net position. Our net position liability for assets is 13.9 as compared to prior year, which was 9.9. So we've had a significant increase there. So we're looking at our current year pension expense is 2.5 million. Yeah. This
Yeah,
isn't anywhere
gotta find-
close to the counties.
Money to.
So like I mentioned,
up.
we don't currently have a full strategy of how going forward, we're going to attempt to address these. But it's just something that we wanted to make you aware of since we got the reports in and wanted to provide those to you. So that's kind of the ripping of the Band-Aid of the biggest.
We knew it was coming.
We
We're
did.
just hoping for the best.
We have had. Go ahead, Retta.
I was just gonna say, this is the report that reflects the negative 20% returns. And then the last year they closed out, what was it, Emily, negative 6%, 6 point something. So we have 2 years of negative
Negatives.
returns. And if you want to know the sensitivity, this is what I used to do in banking, was rate shock. We called it rate sensitivity analysis, and slang was rate shock. But on page 54 of 121, you see how much your liability or your net pension is sensitive to changes in the interest rate. So if you look at
Mhm.
your net pension liability on would be at 6.9, it's about 14 million. If the rate goes down another 1%, it's 19 million. And if it goes up 1%, it's only 9 million. So you're really swinging 10 million between a 2% rate change. So a lot of the dynamics in this, along with the normal stuff of the is market returns that's driving a lot of this, along with the other stuff that they earlier went back and factored in is Americans or people are living longer, so the mortality increased, all of those kinds of things that are in there. And then of course the with inflation, they also look at what your future payrolls are, and that's increasing. So, you know, kind of everything's moving the wrong direction right now on it. But with what we did this year, we worked with CalPERS, Melissa and Emily did, and we started like the UAL, which is the unfunded actuarial liability. So we'll use the phrase UAL a lot. So catch us if you don't know what that means, but that's meaning that's the part that's unfunded in our pension. So CalPERS is amortizing it. We must hit a minimum, and they're amortizing that over 30 years. And they're charging us an interest rate on that about of their normal earnings rate, which is 7%. But then if you kind of prepay it, just like on a mortgage, you know, if you pay a little extra. So we picked up on the 10-year amortization of that side fund of the UAL and started getting a little more aggressive on that. The other thing that we did, and that's on the classic plans, we call them classic, that's on the pre January 1st, 2013 enrollees.
Yeah.
For the PEPRA, we are picking up the UAL every year, so
Every year.
nothing is building.
So we're not
Just
building
keep
up.
it clean, which means you're fully funded. And I saw the first year, I'm like, why are we growing the side fund to 32,000? We just started these plans, you know, we were like ahead on them, and now we're under on those.
Right.
So we're cleaning them up. So the next year's report, it's not growing, we're just sweeping it, you know, keeping those current. So those are kind of like smaller steps, but, so the pepper is gonna be in good shape. It's our classic plans that we're really going to struggle to fund. But we, as you know, Paul, you were on it when we set up, we also have the trust, the pension trust with CalPERS, which is not measured in these reports, is how much that is. And I believe, is it about 4 million now
Yes.
in our CE?
That's when
CET.
we added to maybe
Mhm.
a while back.
So we'll probably want to, I think we took it up 12.5 basis points to, I think it was 7, and I took it to 7.25 this year.
Yeah.
Or I took it 25 basis points. So, so I took it up to 7.25. So it's, again, not much, but it's just, just kind of keep at it, because it's the shocks, just like we are on our rate increases.
Right.
If you do a little bit every year, you will get there without that, doubling effect. So both of those things, I think, we've already implemented, but what we wanted to come back to you with is kind of like pension funding policy and adopt a policy on that. We've kind of worked with a firm that kind of provided us an outline for that. And we're like, they really didn't realize how much of this we were already doing. And we're like, well, we're doing that. Oh, we're doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so,
You were ahead of
Um,
the 8 ball on that one.
yeah, we were ahead.
Yeah.
And it part, kind of that discipline of wanting to do it. But anyway,
You've been good
we'll be
about it.
bringing a informational report probably in October on kind of like where it all, kind of just a summarization of all this, kind of where we stand, which is reflected obviously in our financial reports. But this data will go into the next. But remember, this is lagging about 2 years. So again, we have another year of negative returns. Let's hope the next year does a little better. But the rate swings really do. You see that the sensitivity on this, and swinging 10 million between a -1% or +1% change on the current discount rate of 6.9. So maybe with higher rates and yields, maybe things will
We'll see
improve
it
a little bit
Swing
next
the
year.
other way a little bit.
If you would indulge me for a minute, Ms. Hogan, because you're speaking of your banking, and you're speaking of interest rates. When we talk about interest rates, so we're talking about interest rates probably in stocks and 30-year bonds and things like that. Or are we talking about also the prime? What the government does? Does that affect any of this as far as when they raise the prime or lower the prime? The Fed.
I'd have to go back to the structure of what CalPERS puts our investments in, but
Uh-huh.
I can tell you that the CEPPT closely mirrors it. They're the same fund, people investing in both.
So we're probably not talking about the prime as much as we are interest rates, like
The
on long,
comprehensive portfolio.
yeah,
yield.
long-term
Yeah.
bonds and okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Thank you.
So,
That's-
and
I was
it's
just
probably
asking.
underwater because they may have had some longer durations, and then rates went up,
Yes.
because I remember not that long ago and during COVID, rates were bottomed out, right?
Yeah.
And now we're at what, 7%
Oh, yeah.
for lending rates? 7.5 now.
Some of the rates on 30 years are pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and, people are seeing it in their savings, CD at 4.5 now, but 5% being advertised. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I'm sure just like us, they've got some stuff that's, mark to market that it's, at a loss, a mark to market loss, because just it wasn't the market when they put it in. But hopefully CalPERS will, roll it off and roll into some higher yielding. We also have some other adverse impacts on the classic plans is each IDR, which you're aware of, will affect next year's valuation, because you're just, you didn't collect it, and yet it's now part of your liability that you have to pay out on.
Oh,
And-
joy.
And you just take, what somebody, at the time they left will accrue. So, yeah. So that's also.
Thank you.
crazy.
Councilwoman Baker, did you have any questions or thoughts that you wanted to run by Emily or Retta?
No, I think I should all my thoughts for today. No,
I have to tell you that I feel I've worked with Ms. Hogan on this for 5 years, and I feel like she really does have a handle on it, and she sees the long term, and you know, and I also worked for 10 or 11 years with the district when we had our unfunded liability, but I believe that Retta is constantly monitoring it. I'm sure because of that, Emily is also, and Jason is also. So we don't fall behind.
Right.
Go ahead, Emily. Do you have more? Oh, no more on that?
No more on the pension.
Thank you very much for that.
I feel like we went to the depressing side of things, just having more debt.
Did you want to do the OPEB in?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the next one.
Okay.
The GASB 75?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go to review of city's GASB 75 report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. For anybody that might be online, GASB is Government Accounting Standards Boards, right? 75, isn't that correct? Did I say that correct? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And go ahead, Emily.
65 of 121 is the beginning. Yeah.
Here it is. Post it.
Well,
OPEB.
the sad news on this one is that we were funded. Now we're not. But not by a lot, nothing too overly crazy, but as Retta pointed out in the pension one, you know, that 1% change can be huge or it can be very little. If you look at 70 of 121, it's kind of the same concept of letting you know what our liability is. We're at 245,000 currently. I believe I can't remember the exact number. We were super funded. It wasn't by a ton, but we were. But again, all the factors that come into play, interest rates, ages of people, longevity, who's in our plan, who's not, all of those things affect it. So we're looking at a current net pension liability of 245,000. And our OPEB expense for 23 is 40,000. Want to find your graph page, Retta?
Yeah, I love the graph.
Is it 73?
73,
So if we look at page 73 of 121,
Mhm.
this is really kind of gives you the idea of here's our explicit payments and here's our implicit payments. So if we look at like 2053, we're getting pretty high. As we're projecting out what we're looking at.
Yeah.
I'm probably not explaining this right because Retta explains it to me every year and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Mine's not in color, so I can't really.
You can see the shadow. You can see it.
Okay, so the expected payments are the ones that are in green, so they're the darker shaded ones. So that's what we're expected to pay towards our retiree medical premiums. Those in the yellow reflect our implicit subsidy benefits, the excess of estimated retirees medical of what's going to happen over those time periods, and the projections in gray reflect the increases in benefit levels. So there's some disparity here. We're not all lined up. That makes any sense.
Ms. Hogan, as you look at this from your experience, and then you look at this, and I know I'm asking you to go out 20, 30, 40 years, but I mean, for this graph, I mean, is the main thing we draw from it that there is going to be a little bit more of a discrepancy? Is that the main thing we draw from it 20 or 30 or 40, 50 years from now? Or we're all going to be gone, I know, but.
Yeah, this one doesn't bother me as much as the pension, only because the part of the explicit's what it's the hard premium we pay. The implicit is the subsidy that every 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old
Has to pay?
has to pay in carrying the annuitants. And so it's just that blended rate. You know, if you go and enroll in your healthcare, it's not like, oh, what's the healthcare for the age bracket of 25 to 30 and what's the healthcare cost for that? It's a single rate. That could change in the future. I know CalPERS put its foot in the water on that at one point of trying to segment rates, and I don't think that went over well. But I I actually admired their effort in trying to recognize it. But I think probably they heard from the bargaining units when they put that white paper out very quickly. But anyway, this doesn't bother me. We have to recognize that as a cost of it. But yeah, so I think we just want to stay, we swung from being in a positive position to being 200, was it 245?
245.
And I think somewhere there was a swing, a gross swing on that. I didn't have that page marked. But we can turn this around. We kind of stopped contributing into this trust because we were fully funded. So another thing we did, Emily, I think we put another 25 basis points
Yes.
back into it.
Back into it.
To start seeding it, and hopefully that the returns will turn around. The other effort that the city's doing is we aren't paying for annuitants out of the trust. We're still on they call it pay as you go, meaning we just send the bill to CalPERS on the annuitant share for that minimum. This is just for the minimum employer contribution. Are you familiar with that, Councilmember Baker, that concept? Oh, okay. We're CalPERS, I think the county carried like more than the minimum employer, like depending on when you hired with the county, like you'd get a different share, like they'd pick up a percentage and you'd pick up a percentage. But the city's on the plan where we just pick up what they call in the PHECMA, the minimum employer contribution. And that's what, 159 now, or when did it go up to 162?
I think it went up to 162.
162. So that's what, this unfunded liability is really the expected life of every person that's eligible for this minimum employer contribution of 162 a month for annuitants, and then that gets the medical health care rate index. There is such a thing that gets applied to it annually and goes up. So it can add up fast. So, considering you don't think 162 for, what is our premium singles 800, or it's going to be 925.
925.
So it's not a whole lot, but you can see how quickly it ratchets up. But I still think we're in a good position there. I think I just continuing with the pay as you go, continuing to rely on returns, staying in the trust, as well as, continuing to put little, like 25 basis points, again, not a whole lot, but it will matter over time. And maybe the next by maybe even in a year, if we come out better than expected, we could maybe nudge that again, Emily. But we'll probably come back, the goal is always to keep this fully funded,
Right.
but we will have market swings.
I think
Okay.
page 77 is the one you're referring to. That just
77.
shows that swing between prior year and this year. Is that the swing you're looking for?
Yes, our swing
Okay.
was 578,000, where we were 332 closing the books to the good.
Yeah.
And then 1 year goes by and we're out of the money, 245,000. So net swing was 578. Yes, thank
Oh,
you.
that is a white, 578, 530.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
1 year. So we weren't funding because we are already in the money, I
Right.
call it, we were funded by 332,000, and 1 year just the returns swung us. So it could swing back a little more and we could be back in the money. We just don't want to get too far out of it.
Absolutely. Emily or Retta, did you have anything else you wanted to add on this?
No, I think that's kind of was our goal.
That was the worst
to-
news and a little bit better
Yeah.
news.
Yeah. Mr. City Manager, did you have any?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say was it's really up to this committee to just continue to reevaluate, because they are going to fluctuate. But on this particular one, we should be attempting to be neutral on this so things don't get out of control, because if we're not, all of a sudden that money escalates extremely quickly. And so I think you guys have this perspective, but I just advocate for it again, is that when we do find a $20 bill in our pocket, we're thinking about funding this and we're not thinking about some project, right? When we're doing, because we're going to start soon, some real conversations about economic redevelopment, we should really be considering how that affects funding some of these things that aren't that fun to fund. So that's all I have.
And I don't want to speak for Councilwoman Baker, and I'll give her a chance to speak, but I think, I think you and I are in agreement. I know Red and I have been in agreement on this for 5 years, and that we need to fund these things as much as we possibly can, whether it's this or whether it's another, unfunded actuarial liability. So I mean, I think, I hope that that's how I've come across to you, Retta.
Yeah.
So that I'm supportive of it. But I want to open it to Councilwoman Baker before we move on, in case she has something that she would like to share.
No, I'm gonna go home and digest it.
Yeah.
It's reading material for bedtime.
This is really accounting geek speak. I will say that. It just gets into it, but once you get it, it's fascinating, actually.
It's amazing how just even your dynamic of your current employees and their
Thank you,
age
Cindy.
dynamic can wildly throw your outcome. I always found that interesting, just the mix of people and how many retirees and their age groups, and it's always kind of interesting.
Well, and our city, with the vibrant staff that we have now, that includes everybody that's sitting in this room, we have the ability to grow a minimum of 3 to 4 employees in fire, maybe 1 or 2 more in police, and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 in public works, and 2 or 3 in the office in the next 15 years. And that's going to make, although we may not be here at that time, we have to look out for what's coming, and we do have to plan. I don't think any of us want to see the city be 100,000, and we know we never will be. But you know what? It would sure be nice to have more tax dollars coming in. It'd be nice to have BevMo, and it'd be nice to have a couple more fast food places and about 4 or 5 more restaurants and 10 or 12 more mom and pops, coming, here. So, and that drives our tax dollars, but that also means more fire, cops, public works, streets, sewer, water, everything. So it does mean that we would grow in our staff, which then means that our liability, our unfunded liability grows. So, so.
Yeah.
That's why I think we want to be conservative. And in this point, conservative doesn't mean not spending money. It means keeping up with the money so that we don't go all of a sudden, oh, we only owed $5 last year. We owe 20 this year and I only make $10 a year, So I'm going to go ahead. Can we move on, or?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and move on to item C, which is the Prop 218 procedures.
Before you is the resolution that staff, once we've reviewed it with our legal counsel, is planning on bringing forward to council on September 19th. It outlines our procedures of how we are going to do the Prop 218 vote. We have modeled it after the same process we've always done, as far as I'm aware, that was approved by previous legal counsel. It just walks through the steps of, we have our notice going out, hopefully, if this is approved. I always have to remember to say that. We'll go out with our September 20th billing. We will send them a notice of, this is what we're doing, these are the increases, and this is the steps in which you can protest this rate increase. Outlined in here is how they can send it, what has to be included, and then it's a sealed vote that we hold on to until a specific hearing. Am I remembering that right?
After you do the affidavit of mailing,
Okay.
then that starts the 45-day clock, and so we'll bring it back at 45 days plus the regular council meeting. Then we'll have the public hearing to adopt the rate study, and if we don't have 50% protest, and then move forward with the rate increase, and then there'll be, after that adoption, a 60-day delay before the rates can be implemented. So I think we were in compliance because I independently went to a lot of Prop 218 kind of CSMFO workshops and all like that. So I think our process was pretty current in that, but it's ever evolving with case law.
This is definitely my first rodeo. I've never done this process before, so I am learning a ton of, and they're reading a lot.
what we'll ask of you at a future council meeting will be to adopt the 218 procedures and to initiate that 45-day notification process of the rate increase. And then bring that back to you whenever that calendar's out with the regular council meeting.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Councilman Baker, anything? Okay. Let's see, before we, the future meeting, we need to do, you want to put together a strategy or talk about your strategy for pension and OPEB? What, do we want to establish a date at this time, or are you going to do that through contacting us?
We're gonna do that through contacting you. We don't have a
It's
specific
kind of
date.
like drafting up a policy, and we have templates from other cities as well as a sample template.
So you just want us to be aware of it then?
Yes, this is
Okay.
just an aware that we're
It's
gonna bring
just
it
a-
back.
formally adopting the discipline to start to address this. And as Jason says, if there's $20, that there's a policy that we consider using that $20 to, one-time monies that we weren't expecting, perhaps at some, we'll look at that.
Yeah, figure out where you want to put it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other, Matt, or anything for the good of the order? Retta, Jason, Emily, Colleen?
That's just real quick for 218, these three people, it's a huge win for us. Thank you guys for your support.
Yeah.
Spectacular the amount of effort.
So we'll go ahead and adjourn at 16:50. Can I talk to Matt, Retta, and you for a moment? It's not, I mean, you can be here. It's just, I need some help and some guidance on something that I was approached about.